Jazz Studio patrons, I'm not from this world, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now today I want to address something that Willie33 mentions in a previous video. And what he says is, could you explain how to make a fabric like a bed sheet or towel cover a character? I know you've made videos about it, but I can't manage to do it. The fabric goes through the character and I can't cover it. Well, Willie, let's dive back into this. You are correct, I have made several videos about this. I've made one on weight mapping, which you should check out. It should help you. And weight mapping is an important component to posing things like bed sheets and towels and clothing. And I also made a quick short a while back that kind of shows a little bit of this. But let's dive in and see if we can help you out. So of course I've got Milica here, and she's gonna help us make a bed sheet. And a lot of times we make the mistake of thinking that our prop is gonna help us. And what I've discovered is that the bed props just do not do the job. In fact, I have a few examples here of various beds, and some of them are better than others, but none of them really seem to do what we want when it comes to bed sheets. So first of all, these first two beds, like this bed here, it has no moving parts. It's just one prop. And so we can't do anything with it. Same with this second bed. If you notice, it just in the parameters menu, it just has this little box and it says bed. Actually, what we may discover is these might come in more handy than the more sophisticated beds. The bed that Milica is on, if we click on it, if you look, it's got all these pieces, which is nice because we can move things like the pillows. We can take the pillows and see, I can move the pillows. That can come in handy because we can adjust items on the bed, and so that's kind of cool. It also has a plane, which initially you're gonna think this is exactly what I need because this plane is the bed sheet. And when I opened up this prop, I thought, oh, okay, I'm gonna be able to show you with this kind of more expensive bed here how we can use the existing sheet. And then I was playing with it and it still doesn't work. Same with this bed. This bed is the same way. It's kind of nice because it has movable pillows as well. It has a movable quilt. So see, I can raise this quilt up and down, and you would think that we could turn this into a dForce item and then pose it. I've tried this. I keep getting crashes. I've done a lot of different things. I've tried to unparent the quilts, tried to do all kinds of different manipulations to get our bedding to work and simulate over Milica so that she's under the covers. And it's just a major hassle. Maybe viewers out there will know some tricks, and if you do, please let me know. But I've just found that using the existing bedding is a nightmare. So what we're gonna do is we're going to create bedding that is gonna match this bed. Now I went back to my original scene, and what we're gonna do is make a quilt that is laying over Milica, kind of in the position that this quilt is on the bed. This bed is very limited. It's such a bummer because it has this sheet, but you can't do anything with it. I mean, I can put it in Mesh Grabber and mess around with it that way, but there's nothing I can do with these pillows and these sheets. So what we're gonna do is just create a sheet using a plane. And if you are using one of these other beds, maybe even like this bed here, it might even be easier. Or if we wanted to use this bed where we could move the pillows, and then just get rid of this quilt. We could hide the quilt and make another quilt. That might be the way to go. But let's go back into this scene, and let's imagine that I like this quilt the way it is, and I just want Milica to be under this. How am I going to do that? Well, the way that we're going to do it is we're going to use a plane. So I'm going to come up here to my primitives. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to select a plane, and we want the plane to be somewhere around 200 to 300 divisions. You don't want it too big, like don't make it 1,000, but don't make it 10 either. I've noticed that kind of 200 to 300 is a good size because we're going to make this a dynamic surface. We're going to turn it into dForce, and then we're going to take it and the divisions are going to shape. If we have too many divisions, it takes forever to simulate. And if we don't have enough, it can't give the shape that we want. So I'm just going to hit accept, and we're going to create this plane. I'm now going to raise this plane up, and you can see it's kind of off to the left. And I'm going to position the plane the way that I want it. So I'm going to kind of rotate it so that it's going to cover Milica kind of in the way that that quilt on the bed is positioned. So I can kind of position this. I'm also going to need to make it larger, of course. And so we're going to make this quilt a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make the plane match and get it so it's going to cover Milica's cute little body. All right. So once I have the plane created and I have it kind of positioned in the spot that I want, I'm going to raise it above Milica so it's not touching her. And I always like at this point to give it its texture. So I'm going to go to the surface tab, and if I click on, kind of zoom out here, if I click on the bed, I can look and see what the surface of the bed is. So the bed surface is this right here. It says it's a Fugazi FG bedroom bed. Okay, so if I click on this plane, I can go to the base under the surface tab, and under base color, I can just hit the arrow and I can find that blanket for the bed. So it's going to be the FG bed blanket. And you might have to play around with this. What I found that it is where it says albedo. So I'm going to click on that and see it actually just made the same texture on the plane as we have for the bed. And so if I can show you this a little bit better, maybe if I raise this up, see, we've got the same pattern of quilting. So that's pretty cool. All right, so now it's not going to do anything because this plane is not a dForce item. And just so you know, you can always tell if it's dForce enabled if the prop or product under the parameters tab has a subfolder that says simulation. And you can see that our plane doesn't have that. So what we have to do is we have to create it, which is actually really easy. Just select your plane, come up here to edit, go to object, then move down to geometry, go over and then down to add dForce modifier dynamic surface. All right, so now I've done that, and you can see in my parameters folder under the plane, I now have a simulation tab. So I can click on that and you can see that it's a dynamic surface. So that's really all there is to this. Now I should be able to go to my simulation settings and run a simulation. Now remember, our simulation settings for this quilt, I have some defaults like my gravity, air resistance. What I'm going to do is take the collision mode and change it from either good or better to best. And what that's going to do is it's going to eliminate a lot of poke through, and it gives kind of a more natural fall to the blanket. And so it's going to help. We just have the best kind of collision mode that we can when it's selected. Then I just come up here to simulate, and let's simulate this. It is important to note that if you are happy with the simulation before it's finished, like see, I just got a little bit of poke through, it's kind of coming and going with the poke through here. I can always hit cancel and it'll just freeze your simulation at that step. I'm gonna let it run through, but see how I got a little bit of poke through, even with the best collision mode, I have slight poke through here. If I could have stopped it a little bit earlier, I may have avoided that. And honestly, with this poke through, it's so minor that all I need to do is select Milica and maybe just hit the Y translate once or twice. Just kind of lower her ever so slightly and see that's gone. One thing that I also like is that quilt that was on the bed that wasn't able to move, the plane actually simulated on top of it, giving these folds. If I didn't have that, it would be pretty flat and we might have to be more creative. But because we have that quilt that it's being simulated onto, we have some nice realistic folding. I also wanted to mention that if you are getting an explosion, I didn't have that happen on this, but if we do get an explosion of the blanket as it's simulating, you can select that plane, go to surfaces, and then just select the plane and in the search bar, type in bend. And what you're going to get is this thing called bend stiffness. Bend stiffness is going to determine how flexible the dForce product is. So in this case, it's going to make that blanket either more or less stiff. And it's defaulted to 0.5, which is pretty bendy. And so if you are getting some explosions and you're getting frustrated trying to render, knock this number down to like 0.1, 0.2, and then render. And a lot of times it will take care of those explosions. I mentioned this in a previous video where I talk about turning a dress from non-dForce into dForce. They are so sensitive, they just want to explode immediately. And you can eliminate that issue using bend stiffness. So give that a try if you have that infamous explosion. I also want to show you how you can deal with a bed like this that's actually got the plane already in existence. This plane just does not work very well, so you either want to hide it or delete it. I would not use the product's plane, but what I like about this prop is I can take and move the pillows. So I can adjust the pillows, and you can actually use a product like this and take the pillows off of this product and put it on the bed that you like. But I like the pillows on this bed. So I'm gonna take and we're going to add a blanket to this. So I'm just gonna take and add another plane to this scene, and I have it at the same 300 divisions. And if you notice for this example, I don't have that nice comforter underneath that's gonna give some texture. So just a little trick here as to what you can do is let's scale this up, and when I am going to simulate my blanket, what I'm gonna do is just rotate my plane into a way that's going to cause some folding that is gonna give it a little more texture. Now for this one, I'm gonna make a texture for it as well. In this case, I'm gonna browse, so let's give it some texture here. And now I'm gonna have to go up and of course do the edit object geometry, and we're gonna have to make this plane into a dForce modifier dynamic surface. Okay, so now we've got that. Now, when I think I have this in the position that I like, which that looks pretty good, I might need to make this a little bit bigger, but let's go ahead and simulate and see what happens when we simulate this. Okay, and you can see that it really simulated pretty well. I think I'm getting a little bit of poke through, even with the best, simply because I forgot to mention that Milica's 90 is also dForce and it's simulating with the blanket. So really what I should do is simulate her little nightie first and then freeze it. And if you don't know how to freeze, it's really easy. Just go into your parameters tab, find the product that you want to freeze, which is this romance nightie. And then under simulation in the parameters tab, you'll see freeze simulation and you just hit on. And now that won't simulate when you simulate your blanket. I think I'm getting a little bit of poke through because of that, but that's easily remedied. And it doesn't look that bad. And I like how I made those angles. So, you know, it's not just straight coming down on her. It's kind of angled. So we get some nice folding and draping over the bed itself. And that is how I create fabrics and blankets, towels, things like that that can simulate. So I think the two big take-home messages are use your best collision mode, and then in the surface tab, make sure you are looking for that bend stiffness. I don't know if when you say, Willie, that it's going through your character, or if you mean poke through. And so I think those two things are what's causing it. And don't forget, you need to kind of layer your simulation. So layer the nightie first, freeze it, and then layer your blanket, and you should get less and less poke through. There's always a little bit of poke through, and a lot of times you just kind of have to move things a little bit, like adjust your character. I just moved her down slightly, and that got rid of that. So I hope this really helps. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and shoot me some comments. I'm only about 40 subscribers away from hitting my 3,000 mark, which I know is not a lot, but hey, it's a milestone for me. So if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and help support my channel. I really do appreciate it. Until next time, keep rendering and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.